The wind howled through the trees, its icy fingers clawing at the boy's exposed skin. He stood barefoot in the snow, the cold seeping into his bones, a bone knife trembling in his right hand. At 13, he was neither man nor child, teetering on the precipice of transformation. His future to be decided in the arena that loomed before him, shrouded in shadows and whispers of dread. Heavy smoke curled from braziers stationed at the corners of the arena, barely illuminating the faces of the onlookers, men and women alike, their expressions inscrutable beneath layers of furs and woolen cloaks. They stood in silence, not a word exchanged, their breath rising like ghosts into the frigid air. The boy looked for his father among them, the man who had once lifted him high above his head in laughter, who had told tales of gods and honor. But all he could find were eyes, sharp, evaluating, hungry for blood. The gate behind him creaked ominously, a portal to the unthinkable. He could hear the muffled sound of something moving within, a low growl, the sound resonating through the stillness like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. The boy's heart raced, pounding against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging him to flee, to run back into the night, away from the icy grip of fate. But he had been taught better. His father's lessons wound through his mind, urging him to stand tall, to embrace the strength the gods demanded. They didn't call it cruelty. They called it strength. A flicker of movement caught his eye. The gate swung open with a dull thud, and the boy's breath caught in his throat. The pit yawned before him, an arena of packed earth and blood, its center marked with the remnants of those who had faced the same trial, their lives snuffed out like candles in the wind. The cold wasn't the worst part. It was the silence, an oppressive weight that bore down on him like a mountain. He stepped forward, the crunch of frost beneath his feet like the crack of thunder in the stillness. A distant part of him longed for warmth, for a hearth and the scent of bread baking in the longhouse. But here, that world felt impossibly far away, buried beneath layers of ice and tradition. The air tasted of iron and fear, and he swallowed hard, trying to push down a wave of nausea. In the pit, he could see the faint outline of something moving, large, dark, and primal. The shadows shifted, and his palms grew slick around the knife, the weight of it feeling like an anchor in his grasp. His fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from the knowledge of what was about to unfold. This wasn't a game. It was a selection. As he stepped into the arena, a voice rose from the crowd, powerful and commanding. "You seek to become a warrior." It was an elder, his face carved with lines of age and wisdom, but now twisted with the thrill of the hunt. "Prove your worth, boy. Show us you are not afraid." Fear was shameful. The boy took a breath, filled with the scent of smoke and impending violence, and raised his chin. The trial awaited. He felt the eyes of the crowd upon him, their power like a spell binding him in place. Would he be seen as weak, or would he rise to claim his destiny? The ground beneath him shifted, and he focused on the shadows within the pit. With a low growl, a massive wolf emerged, its coat thick and matted, the eyes glinting like shards of ice. The beast's breath misted in the air, and the boy knew at that moment nothing could save him but his own resolve. Silence filled the arena, a thick, suffocating silence, as if the very gods themselves had paused to watch. He gripped the knife tighter, its bone handle digging into his palm, grounding him. He could feel the primal energy of the wolf radiating outward, igniting something deep inside him. A mix of fear and exhilaration. The wolf sniffed the air, muscles tensing as it locked onto its target. The boy had practiced for this moment, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of it. He had been gifted the knife during a ceremony, blessed under the watchful eyes of the gods, but it felt so much lighter now. He realized it was not just a weapon. It was a burden, a promise he needed to keep. In that moment of stillness, he remembered his brother, how they had played in the fields, running barefoot through the tall grass, climbing trees and dreaming of adventures. Would he be remembered as a hero or a coward? The wolf lunged, a blur of motion, teeth bared and eyes filled with hunger. The boy reacted without thinking, adrenaline surging through him like fire. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws, feeling the rush of wind as the wolf's powerful body slid past him. He sprang to his feet, the knife now a part of him, a second skin. He felt alive. The crowd erupted into shouts, a cacophony of voices celebrating this clash. They believed the gods watched and punished weakness. His heart pounded in time with the frantic rhythm of the battle. He felt the coldness of fear dissipate. The arena transformed into a crucible where he could either forge his future or be consumed by it. He lunged forward, knife poised, determination burning in his chest. The wolf turned to face him, eyes flashing with a primal intelligence that spoke of survival and dominance. They circled one another, predator and prey, each assessing the other's next move. The boy's breath quickened, echoing the frantic beat of his heart, the rhythm of survival. What happened next? No one ever spoke of it. The wolf charged again, and he thrust the knife forward, feeling the weight of the moment coalesce into a singular focus. The arena spun, and for an instant, time stretched, the boy's mind racing through 1,000 possibilities, 1,000 fears. Here, amidst the blood and the cold, he might become something greater. But what awaited him in that pit wasn't human. As the two collided, moments stretched into infinite fragments, each heartbeat a promise unfulfilled, each breath a reminder of the boy he once was. And as he plunged into the chaos, he realized that the outcome mattered little. What would change him forever was the act of stepping into the arena at all. He struck, and the world shattered around him. The air was sharp and biting, an icy whip that cut through the boy's skin as he knelt in the freshly fallen snow, his breath billowing in white clouds that dissipated into the fading light. Blood, his own, smeared across his chest in streaks of crimson, was a vivid contrast against the white, a flag of his potential demise or triumph. He could feel the cold seep through his bones, a slow, creeping chill that was far worse than the pain of the wound itself. It was a reminder that out here, in this arena, he was utterly exposed. Around him, a crowd had gathered, their silhouettes dark against the dimming light of day. They stood as one, a living wall of expectation. Men and women, all of Norse blood, were there to witness the trial, their faces set like stone. Not one dared to whisper a word. Not one flinched at the sight of the boy kneeling with a bone knife held loosely in his hand. The silence was heavy, filled with an unspoken agreement that left no room for sympathy or fear. It was as if the gods themselves had descended to watch this boy's fate unfold. He could feel eyes on him, eyes that tracked every movement with hawk-like intensity. His heart thudded in his chest, a primal drumbeat, louder than the wind that howled through the trees. The boy had rehearsed this moment in his mind countless times, yet the reality was sharper and more brutal than he had ever imagined. This was not mere pageantry. This was a trial designed to forge men from boys, a rite of passage steeped in the bitter truth of life and death. What drove them to stand there, he wondered, watching him? Did they feel his fear? Did they relish in it? He could see a few familiar faces through the swirling snowflakes, their expressions inscrutable, hidden behind thick, weathered skin. His father stood among them, a stoic figure in the gathering dusk, arms crossed, eyes locked on his son. Not a flicker of emotion broke through his hardened visage. Would he be proud if he survived? Or would he see only the boy who failed to impress? But there was no time left for hesitation. The gate that led into the pit loomed behind him, a gaping maw waiting to swallow him whole. He knew what lay beyond, an arena of death where many had gone before him and never returned. The wooden walls were caked with blood, remnants of battles fought in the name of honor and survival. The air smelled of iron and earth, a heady concoction that filled his lungs and steeled his resolve. He had heard the stories of those who had fallen, their bodies left to rot, and of those who had triumphed, celebrated with feasts and toasts raised in their names. He clenched the hilt of his knife, feeling the roughness of the bone beneath his fingers. It was a simple tool, a symbol of brutality and purity. In this moment, it was all he had to defend himself. Kneeling there, he could hear the soft crunch of boots on snow as someone approached from behind. "Remember, fear is weakness," a voice rasped, low and gravelly. It belonged to one of the elder warriors, a man who had seen more winters than the boy had seen summers. "You are not here to be afraid. You are here to show them your strength." The boy nodded, though he wondered what strength meant when faced with such overwhelming odds. With a swift, fluid motion, the elder stepped away, leaving him alone once more, under the watchful eyes of his kin. The world felt impossibly still as the cold seeped deeper into his skin. He dared not look back, nor did he want to. For in that moment, he was not just a boy. He was a vessel for the history and fate of his family, his clan, and the legacy of the Vikings. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, a horn blared, a sound that shook the very air around him. It was the signal to begin. The crowd surged forward, their breath fogging in the cold, a living wave of anticipation. The boy swallowed hard as he gripped the knife tighter, its sharp edges reflecting the dim light of dusk, the only hint of warmth in a world that had turned to ice. Then the gate swung open, revealing the brutal pit that lay before him. He could barely make out the outlines of the other boys who had ventured here before him, their faces twisted in the throes of fear and resolve. But he wouldn't allow himself to be consumed by their terror. Instead, he took a breath, feeling the frost fill his lungs, and stepped across the threshold. What awaited him was not merely an opponent, not just another boy like himself. No, what awaited him in that pit was an entity, an embodiment of the chaos and wildness that defined the Viking way. There was a desperate hunger in the air, a sense of inevitability, as if the very ground demanded blood. The spectators roared, their voices merging into a cacophony that reverberated against the walls of the pit. It was not a sound of encouragement. It was a song of primal instincts, a howl that echoed the very nature of survival. The boy's pulse quickened again, matching the frenetic rhythm of the crowd, a wild dance of adrenaline and dread. As he prepared to face his fate, he stole one last glance back at his father. The man's face remained impassive, but in his eyes, the boy thought he saw a flicker of something. Pride, perhaps. Or was it merely an acknowledgement of the boy's impending doom? With a final breath that seemed to still the world around him, he turned to face the arena before him, where the shadows of his past and the specter of his future coiled like smoke. In that moment, he understood that this trial would not just shape his destiny, it would redefine the very meaning of strength, fear, and survival. He stepped forward, and then, amid the roar of the crowd and the biting cold, silence fell once more. Would he return to the warmth of the longhouse, or would he become just another whisper in the wind, lost to the pit? How a boy became a Viking. The trial arena, where many died. A boy kneels in the snow, the chilled air biting at his bare skin. He watches the frost settle on the ground, forming intricate patterns that shimmer beneath the pale light of dawn. A bone knife rests in his palm, small yet heavy with the weight of expectation. The gate behind him, carved with images of gods and beasts, closes with a finality that echoes in his chest. He can feel the warmth of blood, sticky and raw, smeared across his chest by a man with eyes like steel. Eyes that see everything and judge accordingly. His father stands among the onlookers, the very embodiment of silence. The furs around his shoulders thick and heavy like the weight of his unspoken words. This is it. This is the moment that every story prepared him for. The moment that every whispered tale in the longhouse seemed to promise would come, yet felt impossibly distant. The boy thinks of the stories told by his father, of Odin the All-Father, of Thor with his hammer, of the Valkyries who chose the slain from the battlefield. Strength and valor were demanded of him. Honor and glory were at stake. But what of the softer tales? What of the warmth of the hearth? The laughter that once filled the longhouse as skalds recounted stories of foolish giants and clever foxes. Those tales belonged to another life. One where the world was painted with hues of comfort rather than the stark white of winter. As he kneels, shivering, he realizes how sharply the chasm has widened. The drumming of his heart beats a rhythm of fear and duty, each pulse a reminder of what failure means. Not just death, but dishonor. In this pit, there is no room for tears. There is only silence, an expectant hush that settles over the arena, thick and suffocating. The boy's mind races, flitting between the innocence he once knew and the brutal reality that now looms over him. He remembers being cradled in his mother's arms, soft stories of gentle giants and heroic deeds, where even the bravest warriors could return home and find solace beneath the stars. It was a time when he believed strength was wielded not just on the battlefield, but also in kindness, in compassion, in the bonds shared with family. Those stories had shaped him too, had forged a kind of strength that now felt far removed from this chilling arena. Would he still be worthy of those tales if he failed here? Would he ever hear the gentle laughter of his mother again? Or would her face be forever twisted in grief for a son who could not be a warrior? The air around him is heavy with the scent of smoke and something more visceral. Sweat mixed with the iron tang of blood. Shouts from the crowd pierce the silence, harsh and demanding. They chant his name, a sound that should have been a source of pride, but now feels like an incantation to summon the very gods who watch from their lofty halls. The boy's fingers tighten around the knife, its cool surface grounding him, reminding him of the purpose behind this trial. It wasn't merely survival. It was a transformation from boy to warrior, a crossing of thresholds that would forever separate him from the youth he once was. He glances toward the pit's edge where the shadows gather, and the air seems to shift, vibrate with an energy that thrums against his skin. What waited for him in that pit? He could feel it lurking, a presence that clawed at the edges of his consciousness. It was the same feeling he had when his father regaled the tales of battles fought and lost, of men who had entered the fray only to never return, their names whispered on the lips of those who remained. The boy had always felt invincible then, wrapped in the warmth of family tales. But here, with the eyes of the gods upon him, he felt the truth of his fragility. The gate to the pit opens, and the shadow within shifts, revealing the dark silhouette of a beast. The elders had not lied. This arena was a filter, a crucible where only the strongest would emerge whole, where the weak were left behind, forgotten like ash in the wind. Silence hangs heavy as he steps forward, and in that moment, he is no longer just a boy. He is a vessel of all that has come before him. The hopes of his father, the dreams of his mother, the fierce whisper of the gods demanding courage and strength. And what waited in that pit was no mere beast. It was an embodiment of his own fears, his own doubts, transformed into something primal and hungry. He can feel the collective breath of the crowd, the anticipation, the hunger for blood that flows thicker than water. They expect him to emerge victorious, to stand as a testament to their beliefs, their culture. But what if he falters? What if he is not the boy they hoped he was? The roar of the crowd crescendos, an unyielding tide pushing him forward. He steps into the pit, the cold earth beneath him stark against the warmth of his blood. The beast snarls, a guttural sound that reverberates through his bones. The boy's heart hammers in his chest, and as he raises the knife, he understands that this trial will not just test his physical strength, but will strip him bare of everything he once believed about himself. But what if strength was not enough? What if courage was not enough? He takes a deep breath, the icy air burning his lungs, and faces the beast. And in that moment, he knows that survival means not just conquering the opponent. It means grappling with the very essence of who he is. What lay ahead was not just a fight for his life, but a fight against the shadows of doubt that threatened to consume him whole. The silence stretches, taut like a bowstring ready to snap, and he wonders, would he be remembered as a warrior, or would he forever be marked as a failure? He didn't cry. The blood still stained his hands. And as he stepped deeper into the darkness, he felt the eyes of the gods upon him. But who would help him survive what came next? How a boy became a Viking. The trial arena, where many died. The horn pierced the silence, a single resonant note that shattered the cold air like a glass underfoot. A shiver ran through the boy's spine, but he held his ground, refusing to break. The frost clung to his bare feet, biting through the skin as he stepped onto the packed earth of the trial arena. The light from the dying sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that twisted and writhed, mirroring the turmoil in his heart. This arena, a crude circle of stone, was not just a pit. It was a crucible of fate, a stage for the gods to judge the worthiness of their chosen. With each step, he felt the weight of his ancestors pressing down on him, a lineage of warriors, of men who had stood where he stood now. What would they think of him? Would they whisper his name with pride, or would they turn away in shame? The thought was a lead ball in his gut, heavier than the knife clenched in his hand. He glanced at the gathered men, faces hardened by years of battle, eyes glinting with a mix of anticipation and something darker. They watched, silent sentinels of his fate, their breaths puffing in white clouds, thick with the promise of violence. There was no sympathy here, only the unyielding expectation of strength. To falter would be to bring dishonor to his family, to himself. As he drew closer to the edge of the pit, he saw the ground was stained with old battles. The earth was black and slick, a reminder of what had come before. The smell of iron hung in the air, mingling with the crisp scent of pine and frost. The boy's heart raced, pounding against his ribcage like a trapped animal. His mind raced too. Frantic thoughts of escape, of running back to the safety of the longhouse, flooded in like a tide. But the path behind him was barred. He could not retreat. Ahead, a guttural growl cut through the stillness, primal and raw. The beast that lurked within the pit was not just a creature. It was a reflection of fear, anger, and all the darkness that resided within a man. It was said that the gods watched, waiting to punish weakness. He couldn't fail. Not for himself, and not for those who had come before him. The creature emerged then, a hulking shadow against the fading light, its eyes glowing like embers in the dusk. Its fur was matted with dirt and blood, fanged jaws opening to reveal sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. The sight sent a jolt through him, a wave of terror that clutched at his throat. Panic fought against the training that had been drilled into him since childhood. To stand firm, to face the beast, to embrace the trial. "You are a warrior," he chanted inwardly, a mantra against the rising tide of fear. The beast lunged, and instinct took over. He sidestepped, a move he had practiced countless times in the longhouse. The warmth of laughter and camaraderie replaced by the chilling breath of death. The knife felt light in his hand, a simple bone blade. But in this moment, it became an extension of himself, a symbol of the fight that raged within. He could hear the men behind him, their shouts echoing in his ears, urging him on. "Strike!" they called, their voices a thunderous chorus rising above the growling beast. It lunged again, snapping its jaws just inches from his side. He could feel the heat of its breath, hot and fetid, brush against his skin. His heart hammered in his chest, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon him. He thrust forward, the blade slicing through the air, aiming for the soft underbelly where the creature's hide was vulnerable. The knife connected, and for a brief moment, the world narrowed to the sound of flesh tearing and the hot spurt of blood. But the victory was short-lived. The beast roared in agony, thrashing against him, knocking him to the ground. The cold earth bit into his back, and the sky swirled above him, darkening as shadows enveloped his vision. He scrambled to regain his footing, but the beast was relentless, teeth bared in a snarl of anger and pain. It was not just an animal. It was fury given form, the embodiment of all that he had to overcome. His breath came in ragged gasps, the icy air filling his lungs with each frantic inhale. It was not just survival. It was a dance of life and death, a performance for the gods who judged his worthiness. All around him, the men cheered and jeered, voices drowning in a cacophony that rose above the clash of beast and boy. Each shout was an echo of his ancestors, a reminder that he was not alone, even in this moment of ultimate isolation. The knife slipped from his grip, landing several paces away in the snow. The beast lunged again, and he rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws. Panic surged through him like wildfire. He needed that blade. He tasted copper in his mouth, the metallic tang sharp against his tongue. With a surge of adrenaline, he dove toward the knife, fingers brushing against the cold bone. The world narrowed into a tunnel of focus. He felt as if time had slowed. He grasped the hilt, pulling it toward him as the creature turned, eyes locked onto him with a wild, feral hunger. Now armed, he rose to his feet, feeling the power of the moment thrumming through his veins. His heart was a drumbeat of resolve, and for the first time, he understood the true nature of survival. It was not just about living, but about fighting with every ounce of strength, of blood and bone. The arena was his proving ground, and he would not fall here. He met the beast's gaze, and in that instant, something shifted. It was not just a fight for life. It was a culmination of everything he had learned, everything he had endured. The cold, the isolation, the gut-wrenching fear. It all coalesced into a single moment of clarity. He was not just a boy. He was a warrior. With a roar of his own, he charged, knife raised high, ready to carve his name into the annals of history. As the beast lunged, he struck, and the world exploded into chaos. But what came after the silence? No one would ever speak of it. How a boy became a Viking. The trial arena where many died. The boy emerged from the pit, bloodied, but alive. The cold, biting air felt like a slap across his face, pulling him sharply back to the world he had once known. He staggered, briefly losing his footing on the damp earth, and heaved deep, shuddering breaths, each one a reminder of the darkness he had just faced. Darkness that had taken the shape of flesh and bone, of screams that echoed hauntingly in the recesses of his mind. Around him, the spectators, fathers, brothers, warriors, stood in a half-circle, their gazes locked on him with a mix of pride and something darker. Their faces, illuminated by the flickering torchlight, were a jagged tapestry of anticipation and indifference. The smoke curled up from the torches, mingling with the scent of blood and frost, creating a suffocating atmosphere that felt as if it were wrapping its fingers around his throat. Yet here he was, standing, breathing, a boy who had become a man by the cruelest of measures. The voices of the onlookers melded into a cacophony, a low hum of approval laced with whispers that twisted through the air like a serpent seeking warmth. He survived. He has learned. A true son of Odin. Yet the boy felt little of this triumph. Instead, his heart raced with the primal rhythm of fear. The clamor only reminded him of what lay behind him. The blood, the pain, the boy who had come before him and didn't return. He looked down at his hands. They trembled, streaked with crimson, a stark contrast against the pale of his skin. The bone knife he had wielded felt foreign now, slick and heavy with the weight of his actions. He could still hear the clang of steel against steel, the guttural sounds of men fighting for their lives, and the chilling silence of those who had already failed. How many boys had stepped into that pit before him, emboldened by bravado, only to find the ground swallowing them whole? He recalled the face of the man he had fought, the one who had pushed him to the brink, forcing him to tap into a reservoir of strength that felt both powerful and alien. The man had been fierce, a shadow of death moving in the flickering light. He had fought with a desperation that mirrored the boy's own, but it was the moment when the blade found flesh, when he felt the warmth of blood surge against his skin, that shattered the fragile image of honor he had clung to. What was valor in the face of such raw, consuming violence? As he stumbled away from the gathering circle, the cheers faded behind him, replaced with the voice of his conscience, echoing louder than any cry of victory. "What price is this?" it whispered. Each step took him further from the arena and deeper into the forest where shadows danced between skeletal trees. The winter night wrapped around him like a shroud, the cold seeping into his bones while dread clutched at his throat. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs underfoot, the distant hoot of an owl. Yet these familiar sounds felt foreign, twisted somehow, as if the very land was betraying him. He could almost hear the whispers of the gods mocking him, reminding him of his transgressions and the blood that stained his soul. He felt the weight of their gaze, heavy and suffocating, as if he had become a vessel for their judgment. He stumbled further, seeking solace in the solitude of the trees. Each breath drew in the crisp air, but it was tainted, laden with the memories of the arena. He buried his face in his hands, the cold numbing his cheeks, only to be met with the blood that remained, a visceral reminder of what he had done. He had entered that pit as a boy, naive and light-hearted, but had emerged a vessel of darkness. What had he lost? The innocence that had once colored his world had been washed away, replaced by something jagged and raw. Was this what it meant to be a man? To learn to wield death, to embrace brutality? His chest tightened with each revelation, and a sob escaped him, raw and unrefined, a sound not meant for the ears of the gods or the warriors who had watched him fight. The ground beneath him felt unsteady as he pressed his back against the trunk of an ancient tree. Its bark was rough and unyielding, a reminder of the strength he sought to emulate. But strength came at a cost. The boy's mind churned with the images of the arena, the glint of steel, the clash of wills, the finality of death. It twisted something deep within him, a gnawing realization that he would never be whole again. In the distance, he heard the thundering of hooves, a party of warriors returning to the village, bearing the victory of the day. Each beat of the drums resonated in his chest, a pulse that felt foreign to him now. It was a call to celebrate, to revel in the bloodshed that had marked his transformation. But how could he celebrate when he felt so hollow, so irrevocably changed? As he leaned against the tree, the gust of wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it the taint of his fear and confusion. The boy had survived, but the cost was unfathomable. An exchange of innocence for survival. A heavy weight settled in his stomach, a truth he feared to confront. What would he tell his mother? Would she see the shadows lurking behind his eyes? The darkness that had seeped into his soul? Or would she celebrate, her joy mingling with his sorrow in a twisted embrace? As the sounds of the village grew louder, he felt the mantle of expectations settle upon him as if he were meant to wear the very chains of his experiences. The boy took a deep breath, steeling himself against the tide of uncertainty. There was a path laid out before him, one that would lead him back to the fires of the longhouse and the embrace of his family. But with each step, he felt the weight of the arena holding him down, anchoring him to the very horrors he wished to flee. As he moved, the night air pulled at him, urging him to remember the faces of those he had fought, to remember the choices that led him to this moment. In the end, he was no longer just a boy. He was a lad marked by blood, a Viking in the making, but at what cost? And so, he stepped forward into the glow of the hearth, feeling the warmth wash over him, but knowing that even the brightest fire could not erase the darkness that clung like a shadow. What now? What remained of the boy who had once stood in innocence, now forever stained by the blood of those he had faced? Would he ever find peace in this new identity? Or would he be haunted by the echoes of the arena until his last breath? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the streets of modern-day Los Angeles. The air smelled of gasoline and sun-baked asphalt, a far cry from the biting cold of the Scandinavian winter. I wandered through the city, my thoughts mired in images of a boy, a blade, and a brutal initiation that felt less like history and more like a haunting echo of something unrecognized. How a boy became a Viking, the trial arena where many died. It played in my mind like an incantation, tying me to the past in a way I could neither shake nor fully understand. I had seen the boy, a mere 13 years of age, standing in the cold, barefoot, with his heart pounding against his chest like a war drum. His father stood by, a stoic figure against the infinite white, arms crossed, unyielding. In that moment, it was clear. This was not merely a rite. It was a reckoning. The boy's breath formed clouds in the frigid air, each exhale a testament to his existence. Each inhale a prayer to gods who demanded strength and offered little comfort. But what made these warriors seemingly impervious to fear and pain? In an age steeped in survival and sacrifice, honor was etched in blood, and the cold was a reminder of one's frailty, a cruel teacher in the arena of masculinity. Feeling the thrum of the city around me, I watched the world bustle on, unaware of the rituals that stitched the fabric of humanity together, both ancient and modern. My gaze flitted to a group of young men across the street, clad in fitted clothes and bearing the weight of their own expectations. I saw the same tension in their shoulders, the same need to appear fearless. They laughed loudly, a sharp contrast to the silence of the boy alone in the pit. Yet the laughter felt like a mask, a thin veneer over their own struggles. The boy had stepped into the pit, the gate slamming shut behind him. I could almost hear the echoes of the horn that summoned the shadows. His heart raced, not from the thrill, but from the knowledge of what lay ahead. The boy didn't scream when the blade hit flesh. That's why they let him live. The silence of the arena was deafening, filled with the weight of expectations. Standing there, I considered how these ancient trials mirrored the experience of coming-of-age struggles today. We're all born with a knife in our hands, metaphorically speaking. A weapon to carve out our identities in a world that often feels hostile. Young men today face their own trial arenas, whether in the form of social media pressures, academic expectations, or the relentless pursuit of success. The stakes are different, yes, but the whispers of inadequacy remain the same. Silence is weakness. Fear is shameful. In the Viking Age, they believed the gods watched, punished weakness with swift cruelty. In our world, perhaps it's the gaze of society, an unforgiving audience that evaluates and critiques. The price of manhood, even now, seems to demand a certain stoicism, a reluctance to show emotion, to falter. The scars we bear, whether from blades or betrayals, mark our journeys. Some of us walk away with our lives. But what of our spirits? As night cloaked the city, the streetlights flickered on, illuminating the shadows where dreams often linger just out of reach. I could feel the weight of history pressing against me. What happened to the boy's laughter? Did it die in the pit alongside those who never returned? Did the gods smile upon him, or did they simply turn away unimpressed? I found myself standing still, surrounded by the noise of honking horns and the distant thumping of music. But inside, it felt like I was in that arena, a spectator to a trial that has repeated itself across generations and cultures. The visceral dread I had felt watching the boy was replaced by an unsettling weight of empathy. His strength, forged through blood and pain, was not merely a relic of the past, but a mirror reflecting the struggles faced by many today. How did those ancient rites shape our present identities? What do we sacrifice in the name of strength? Do we still believe that to bend is to break? The questions spiraled in my mind like the smoke from a torch, lingering over the memories that refused to fade. As I continued my walk, the juxtaposition of past and present hung heavy in the air. The boy's journey echoed in the faces around me, in the hurried pace of life, in the very essence of survival that coursed through our veins. We're all warriors in our ways, battling for acceptance, for ourselves, for a sense of belonging. The shadows of violence may have shifted, but they still linger, a reminder of the trials we must each face. He didn't cry. They smeared the blood anyway. And when he stepped into the arena, he realized the silence was colder than the snow. What truly waited for him in that pit wasn't human.